Good evening. Welcome to Inside City Hall for Thursday, October 2nd, 2025. I'm Errol Lewis. Public schools may have closed today because of the Jewish holy day of Yom Kippur, but education was the topic of the day in the race for mayor. Our Dan Rivoli joins me now with tonight's top story. Good evening, Dan.
Hey, good evening, Errol. That typical quiet during a holiday on the campaign trail was punctured by a New York Times article announcing that Zohran Mamdani, the frontrunner for mayor, would propose eliminating the gifted and talented test for kindergarteners. That policy came in the form of an answer to a New York Times questionnaire. Now, former Mayor Bill de Blasio tried to eliminate it. Mayor Adams brought it back and expanded it. And now Mamdani wants to get rid of it for the city public school system's youngest students.
I believe public education would take a giant step back if Mamdani was elected.
Andrew Cuomo seizing on Zohran Mamdani's education plans and his proposal to eliminate part of the city's gifted and talented program in public schools. It's a reason Cuomo says is leading parents to move away from New York.
When you ask parents why they're leaving the city, one of the #1 reasons is our public education system.
Mamdani, the Democratic nominee for mayor, in a statement to the New York Times, said he would end the gifted and talented program for kindergarteners and embrace the policy of former Mayor de Blasio. De Blasio tried to phase out the gifted and talented program for elementary students. Mayor Adams brought it back and expanded it. The Mamdani campaign later told the New York Times Mamdani would keep the gifted and talented test for third graders. Mamdani's campaign in a statement said Zohran knows that 5-year-olds should not be subjected to a singular assessment that unfairly separates them right at the beginning of their public school education.
Ending the gifted and talented is exactly wrong. And I would do the exact opposite. I would expand gifted and talented and expand what they call the specialized high schools.
Curtis Sliwa, the Republican candidate, wants to expand it. He also criticized Mamdani, who went to the Bronx High School of Science, as a son of privilege, wanting to deprive students advantages he got in education.
So he benefited from all that, but he wants to deprive young children who need advanced courses or they stifle in a classroom.
And in that New York Times questionnaire, Mamdani said he would maintain the entrance exam for the city's specialized high schools. Errol.
So there were a couple of different conversations going on there all at the same time, right? I mean, one thing that gets talked about a lot is that the gifted and talented program is intended to keep parents in the system who might otherwise look elsewhere to parochial school, private school, or even leaving the city for a suburban district.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was, for Cuomo, one of the things he said would drive people out of the city is that if you eliminate this test for at least kindergarteners, that messes up the planning. They might want to go private, and if they can't afford private, maybe go to another school system where the public schools are better. Of course, we've covered the other side of this, that this entrenches the segregation we see in the city's public school system. You see Mamdani saying it's not fair to track kids that early at that young age, but for other parents, this is the way to get a good public school education and not have to pay out of pocket so much for the private schools or parochial schools.
And a lot of the equation has changed as well because of the new class size mandates, right? So that what's constituted or what's believed to be a, quote, regular education looks a lot different than it did even just 5 or 10 years ago.
All right, and that's such a difficult thing for the city school system to accomplish, making sure that they are comporting with that class size law. You saw Mayor Adams trying to add seats where needed and have this third grader entrance exam. Mamdani now says he wants to keep that third grader entrance exam after it was a bit of a question for the New York Times. The campaign came back, said we'll keep the gifted and talented test for those third graders, but at least for kindergarteners through the second grade, that's going to change a lot for not just the city school systems, but the parents who want to send their kids there.
Okay, stay right there, Dan. I want to bring in our Bobby Kuza for some more analysis. And, you know, Bobby, it's 15 years in the past, but when I was trying to figure out what to do with my little guy, we took the test. You know, he got a pretty good, number, a pretty good slot and so forth. In the end, we didn't use it, but it really was part of the conversation. Did you do any of that with your kid?
I did, actually, and I found it extraordinarily early to have a child tested at age 4. I mean, we were joking about this before. I remember my 4-year-old daughter, she didn't even know what a test was, right? And then you're taking her into this auditorium and they get taken away with a teacher who administers the test. She'd never been left alone with a stranger before. So it's hard for kids at that age to really be measured in a way that's accurate. But what de Blasio did, he said he was going to phase out the system, but he made the announcement in October of 2021, right before he left office. So then Mayor Adams came in and said, well, no, that's not what we're going to do. We're going to change the program and actually expand it a little bit. And so now, like Dan said, what Mamdani has said and sort of clarified is that he's going to get rid of it at the kindergarten entry point, but leave the entry point at 3rd grade. But by the way, he hasn't really talked much about education plans in general, and he's been under some pressure to talk more about it. As far as the specialized high schools, he used to be very critical of the SHSAT, the entrance exam to get into these specialized high schools. Now he's backed off of that. Cuomo, by the way, says he wants to double the number of specialized high schools. And then we also know that Mamdani has said he wants to soften mayoral control. He wants to weaken mayoral control, which a lot of people were surprised about. It's not often a mayor wants less power as opposed to more. So that's going to be an interesting conversation because we don't know exactly what that means. And he's going to have to negotiate it in Albany next spring.
And, you know, it's remarkable. It's by far the biggest chunk of the budget, and they've probably talked about it less than any other issue on the campaign trail. I understand that we've heard from the former governor today about whether or not he's going to be speaking with or maybe getting the support of Mayor Adams.
Yeah, and I know you talked to him about this earlier this week, but he said today, he was asked if he had been speaking with Mayor Adams about this. He said, I have not had a formal conversation with the mayor, but he expects to in the coming days, and that he would welcome his endorsement. So we'll see if there's some kind of announcement. I don't know how helpful it is necessarily for the mayor to endorse Cuomo, or if we're going to see them out on the campaign trail linking arms, or what form this might take. But it seems like that might be where we're headed.
Yeah, I think we can see where this is going. If the mayor's chief of staff and the mayor's lawyer and, have all sort of lined up, the first deputy mayor all saying that they want to support Cuomo, I guess it's almost a formality at this point.
Yeah, and forget about the low poll numbers Mayor Adams has. There's something a little bit beyond that, and that's fundraising. Former Governor Cuomo was asked about how his fundraising has been going since the mayor dropped his reelection. Says it's been going really good. So at least Cuomo has that kind of support for him.
All right. Thank you, Dan. Thanks, Bobby. As a reminder, you should check out the special live event that we recorded this week. It's called New York Decides, live from Chelsea, and it features a crossover episode of our political podcast, Off Topic on Politics and You Decide. I was joined by my New York One colleagues, Courtney Gross and Bobby Kuza and Bob Hart, along with Emmy Award-winning actress and activist Cynthia Nixon and J.C. Polanco, a frequent guest on this program and a professor of law and the former president of the New York City Board of Elections. Here is a preview of that conversation.
But I will tell you, as I said, I learned a lot of things, and one of the things that I learned and continue to learn, because it continues to be demonstrated to me, is how hungry people are for a true progressive candidate. And even somebody who comes in a package of an actress who's never run for or held political office, that I still run into people, as I was telling you guys in the dressing room, I still run into people who come up to me and say, I voted for you, please run again, I so believed in your candidacy. And yeah, maybe they liked me because they liked Miranda or they liked some other part they'd seen me in, but I think what they liked was my platform, which was, the way we developed our platform was we took all the people, the activists that had been advocating for, affordable housing, for a better MTA, for healthcare for all, for a Green New Deal, and we brought them in and they wrote the platform. And this is to some extent, why AOC got elected. This is why de Blasio got elected, and this is why I believe in November, Mamdani, who has surprised so many people, come out of nowhere, but this is why he will, I think, be the next mayor of New York.
And you can catch the full episode on the New York One YouTube channel, the Spectrum News app, or wherever you get your podcasts. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll turn our focus to Rikers Island. The next mayor of New York is expected to oversee the legally required closure of that troubled jail complex. We'll tell you what the candidates are saying about it. Later on tonight, I'll talk about the 3 housing measures that will appear on your Election Day ballot. I'll be joined by Amit Singh Baga, the director of a new campaign encouraging New Yorkers to vote in favor of those measures. Stay with us.
Every day tells a new story. At Mornings on One, we're dedicated to bringing you the stories that matter most to start your day. With in-depth coverage of the day's developing news.
I'm Pat Kernan. Here are the stories we're following this morning.
And weather updates every 10 minutes.
Some morning sunshine possible, clouds take over.
It's our responsibility to get you the information you need before you head out the door. Mornings on One. Weekdays starting at 6 on the Spectrum News app. Free for Spectrum customers.
Spectrum TV, isn't that only live TV?
No, it's only all my favorite streaming apps with live TV.
Okay.
It's only all included at no extra cost. And that's the magic of math. Will this be on the test? Sure. Why not?
It's only one simple payment for all our TV. We gotta simplify and win. Winning is equally important.
If not, more so.
Yeah!
Only Spectrum TV, fixed TV.
I'm Sandra, this is Jorge, and we were adopted in 2019. I remember when they first came to us, Michael was already a teenager. The whole cliche of they're so lucky to have you guys, and it's the other way around. They have changed our family for the better. They chose to love us. They didn't have to. They chose us. Family.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org.
And that's a look at some of what's in the papers this morning.
We've done with the sports section.
Today's story is about the latest chapter for a beloved local business.
It's a beautiful day with temperatures in the 60s, but showers are expected in the next hour.
In a city that's always on the go, it's important to stop to hear the stories that connect us.
The news that matters to New Yorkers. That's what brings us together. That's Mornings on One.
Weekdays starting at 6.
Exclusively on Spectrum.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. Last night on this program, we brought you a special report about 5 violent incidents in the city's jails that led to a federal takeover of Rikers Island. Tonight, we're going to look at what the next mayor might do about it. The city's jails on Rikers Island are supposed to be closed by August of 2027, but the new replacement facilities have been badly delayed. It is a huge challenge for the next occupant of City Hall. Our Courtney Gross joins me now with more. Good evening, Courtney.
Good evening, Errol. I was just looking at the average daily population for Rikers Island, and as of September, there are about 7,200 detainees there on a daily basis, which is thousands more than the borough-based jails will be able to hold. It is a huge challenge for whoever the next mayor might be.
Get the gurney, get the gurney.
This is Rikers Island, a chaotic and violent place for decades and headed for a federal takeover. An independent manager is likely to be appointed this year before a new mayor takes office. Nonetheless, the jails are legally required to be closed in 2027, a deadline city officials acknowledge is impossible to meet. And the construction of replacement facilities is one of the biggest challenges facing the next mayor.
Rikers is a disaster for New York City in terms of public safety, fiscal sanity, even basic morality. As a city, we created a plan to replace Rikers with something much better, something that's safer and smarter. And it's going to be in the hands of the next mayor to bring us that better, safer future.
Of the remaining candidates in the race, there is a clear division on this issue.
I think a lot of people who defend the carceral state, they defend the idea of it and the way it makes them feel.
Zoran Momdani in 2020 asked about the purpose of prisons.
The law states that we would close Rikers Island by 2027. This mayoral administration has made it functionally impossible to do so.
Now, the Democratic mayoral nominee says he would drive down the population on Rikers Island so it can eventually close.
We need a place where death is not a fact of life, and that's what Rikers Island has become. And the contracts the city has entered into on the construction of these borough-based jails, those are ones that I will follow through on because it is part of ensuring that we can actually close Rikers Island.
Rikers Island, I said, should have been closed a decade ago.
His rival, Andrew Cuomo, also supports the closure of Rikers Island, but says there needs to be a new plan to do so, since the 2027 deadline will not be met.
The situation with the city jails is just a fiasco. It's just a fiasco. It is exactly what you think would happen when New York City says, we're going to build jails, we're going to get them done in 5 years, here's the budget. The budget on all of them is blown, the timeline is blown, it is just a total debacle.
The city is set to replace Rikers Island with 4 new jails in Queens, Brooklyn, Manhattan, and the Bronx. But those facilities are years behind schedule, some not opening until the early 2030s. And that price tag for those facilities has ballooned in recent years. Starting at $8 billion, it is now $16.
You leave it open, you rehab the existing facilities that house the inmates.
Republican Curtis Sliwa says keep Rikers open, turn the new jail sites into affordable housing, rehab the empty buildings on Rikers Island.
The facilities that are now empty, and you turn some of them into mental health care facilities, because far too many of the men and women and others that are housed on Rikers Island have serious mental health issues.
And of course, we don't yet know who the next mayor or how much power the next mayor will have over the day-to-day operations on Rikers Island. And that, of course, is because a federal judge right now is considering names for a federal receiver who obviously will have a lot of power over what happens on Rikers Island. And Errol, just one more thought. When I was going through all the candidates' campaign websites to see how much time, pages they dedicated to the idea of Rikers Island, considering what a huge problem it is, only one of them actually had a whole page and plan for Rikers, and that, of course, was Curtis Sliwa. And he has a very different opinion about what to do on Rikers Island than the other 2 candidates.
Very interesting. I'll have to talk about that with him at some point. You know, when Sliwa says, let's rehab the existing buildings, it wasn't just because they're old buildings that the law passed to close down Rikers Island.
No, I mean, there is a symbolic nature of Rikers Island. We know that just being so isolated from the rest of the city, it creates problems unto themselves, but the buildings are falling apart. That is the main weapon, or the most popular weapon, detainees use on Rikers Island during these detainee attacks or attacks on correction officers. We've obviously seen some horrible attacks on correction officers this year. The main weapon is the buildings themselves. They take apart the building, they get plexiglass, they get a piece of the wall, and they can attack and other people and make a shiv out of it. And there are some estimates, including, I believe, by the Independent Rikers Commission, about how much it would cost to rehab the existing facilities on Rikers Island. And the thought is that it would cost more to do that on Rikers than to build the new jails that are already shovels in the ground in process.
Okay, thanks very much, Courtney. We are going to take a short break now. Coming up, it's day 2 of the federal government shutdown with no clear deal in sight. We're going to bring you the latest from Washington, D.C. in 2 minutes. Stay with us. This election year is all about New York City. There are 51 council seats up for grabs, races for our next city comptroller and the next public advocate.
Plus, an unprecedented race for mayor. That puts the power in your hands to decide who will run our city.
Our team of political experts will be covering every angle of this election to keep you informed on how it could affect you, so you can feel confident with your decision at the polls.
Stay with Spectrum News New York 1 for Decision 2025, exclusively on Spectrum.
It's only a game. It's only a little rivalry. It's only a ritual. When I come home late, and a few generations. You're always there. And only Spectrum TV includes all your favorite streaming apps with live TV at no extra cost. It's only a game. It's only everything.
Mom was always organized, but she started forgetting to pay her bills on time. And she'd buy the same gifts over and over.
Telling the girls about my Alzheimer's diagnosis was really hard. At first, we had our cries, but then we were like, okay, let's make a plan.
Early detection gave us time to adapt together.
It's so important for you to think about what you can do and making the most of what you have.
If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together.
From my time growing up in Queens watching New York 1 to my time reporting here, I've seen how quickly a story can change. At News All Day, we bring you the news as it's happening, from around the boroughs to local government to your neighborhood. Because our city never stops moving.
3, 2, 1.
Hi, I'm Shannon Ferry with the day's developing stories. But first, stay up to date and informed with News All Day, weekdays from noon to 4.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. Day 2 of the federal government shutdown brought lawmakers no closer to striking a deal, as Democrats and Republicans continue to blame each other for failing to fund the government. And at this point, it's looking less likely that any action will happen this week. House Republicans are out of town and not set to return until Monday. Spectrum News national political reporter Evan Kosloff joins us now from inside the Capitol with the very latest. Good evening, Evan.
Well, Errol, it's actually been a pretty uneventful day here on Capitol Hill. If you look behind me, you're going to see a lot of media, but not any lawmakers. That's because the House and the Senate are out of session for the Yom Kippur holiday, but already nationwide, we're starting to see the impacts of this shutdown.
What a shame.
The shutdown disappointment being felt by tourists in Charlestown, Massachusetts, who were turned away from the USS Constitution.
Thank you, Democrats and Republicans.
As visitors to the beautiful Yellowstone National Park in Montana had fewer services and amenities available due to the shutdown.
This could greatly impact revenue streams here.
Some businesses also worried about their bottom line, like this California restaurant near Travis Air Force Base, where members of the military are no longer getting paid.
I hope that we can continue to keep the doors open.
The impacts even on display on Capitol Hill, where the visitor center is now closed.
Democrat kiddies want you to have health care. Republican kiddies do not.
All as the framing war is underway, as Democrats and Republicans put the blame for the shutdown on each other. Republicans have been pushing for a stopgap measure already passed in the House, which would keep the government open through November, mostly at current levels, urging Democrats to get on board.
All the pressure should be on the 44 Democrats who were dug in to try to pander to the far left corner of their base.
Motion is not agreed to.
In the Senate, nearly all Democrats voted against this GOP-backed plan on Wednesday, demanding concessions on health care. That includes an extension of Affordable Care Act subsidies, which are set to expire later this year, as well as a rollback of cuts to Medicaid that were a part of the president's policy bill signed into law in July.
Republicans refuse to do anything to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits, and as a result of that, tens of millions of Americans are going to have their premiums skyrocket out of control. Democrats are in this fight until we win this fight.
All right, now the Senate is expected to be back here on Capitol Hill on Friday, where they're going to have more votes on funding measures to try and fund the government. The big question is whether they're going to get more Democrats to support the Republican version. As for the House, they're not expected to be here till next week. Errol?
So now, Evan, President Trump has called this shutdown a, quote, unprecedented opportunity to cut programs that he doesn't like and slash the federal workforce. What are we seeing on that front?
Right, so it's worth looking at how shutdowns typically work, where you have federal workers that are either essential, and that means that they have to keep working, but they don't get paid till the shutdown's over. And then there are the non-essential workers that could face furloughs, meaning they can't work, they have to go home, but then when the shutdown is over, they come back to work. But the president has floated instead having some mass layoffs, and that's going to be a big question here. That's why a lot of people were paying attention when he met with Russ Vought, his budget chief, at the White House. Now, he wrote on social media, this is the president, that the purpose of all this meeting was to determine which agencies could face cuts, and then also whether it's temporary or permanent. So that, of course, is something that's going to get a lot of attention. I know that in New York, this is something you guys have been watching. Vought took to social media announcing some $18 billion in cuts to infrastructure projects in New York City.
And Evan, how long might the shutdown last? Is there optimism that there could be a deal anytime soon?
Well, really, I think that across the board, there's actually pessimism from people on both sides of the aisle about whether they could reach a deal anytime soon, because the question is how you're going to find your way out of this. Of course, the Democrats could fold here, where they give Republicans the votes to get to 60 that you need to clear the Senate. But it looks like Democrats are looking for a bit of a fight, at least leadership. The other side of it, you know, Republicans could fold themselves. They could give the Democrats all the concessions they're looking for. But perhaps, Errol, the more realistic is a third lane where we could see some moderates from both parties sort of come together and find some agreement, maybe give Democrats some of what they're asking, but not all of these concessions that they're looking for. In fact, it is notable that we saw on the Senate floor a group of lawmakers from both parties sort of talking about perhaps, Errol, a way to get out of this shutdown.
All right. Thanks very much, Evan. We are going to take a short break now. Coming up, we'll take a closer look at the housing measures that will appear on your ballot in just a few weeks. I'll be joined by the chair of a new PAC that is supporting the measures. Stay with us.
My time at New York One has shown me that in the city that never sleeps, the news never stops. So as the day winds down, turn to the rush hour.
Good afternoon, I'm Monica Bergman.
To catch up on the stories that matter across the 5 boroughs, with in-depth interviews from the city's newsmakers, plus the latest forecast. Catching you up with today, preparing you for tomorrow. Right here on the Rush Hour. Weekdays from 4 to 7 p.m.
There's an international travel plan with Spectrum that was an additional $10 a month, as opposed to paying a ridiculous amount per day for roaming fees. This literally felt like my old phone carrier was reaching their hand into my wallet and just helping themselves to some of my cash. I like having no surprises when it comes to my cell phone bill. And with Spectrum, that's been the case. So it saved me a ton of money.
Real customers, real savings. To see how much you can save, visit spectrum.com/save.
I'm Chris Jakimick. I served in the United States Air Force, and I deployed 3 times. So in 2017, I was serving as an Air Force First Sergeant. Our motto in that role is, my job is people, everyone is my business. But unfortunately, in that year, I would lose my own brother, Lance Corporal Adam Jakimick, to suicide. The majority of veteran suicides are from guns. I store my weapons securely, not only for myself, but for my family. My service never stops.
At Spectrum Noticias, we recognize that our New York City community is vibrant and diverse.
Spectrum Noticias delivers balanced coverage of the stories that matter in our communities and across the country.
Our journalists are based in the neighborhoods we cover, ensuring you get in-depth reporting on what's happening in the places we call home.
So join us at Spectrum Noticias. We're always on, always there for you.
Now available on your TV. Check your local listings. Also available on the Spectrum News app.
I think that these are proposals New Yorkers deserve to vote on. These are proposals that I take very seriously.
Can't allow one council person a veto on a project.
So you're supporting passage of these charter?
Yeah, otherwise you'll get nothing done.
If you want to preserve your residential neighborhoods and everything that we've grown up with, zoning, community boards, the power that an individual council person should continue to have, vote for Curtis Lee.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. We just heard from the 3 mayoral candidates throughout the course of the week about their perspectives on some of the ballot proposals that New Yorkers will decide in the upcoming election. That includes several measures that would change how our city approves new housing projects, and one measure that deals with modernizing the city's maps. A new campaign called Yes on Affordable Housing is seeking to educate city voters about these 4 proposals and get them passed in November. Joining me now to talk more about all of it is Amit Singh Baga. He is the manager of the campaign and a Democratic strategist. Welcome back to the program. Always good to see you.
Great to be here.
So let's dispense with the easy one, right? Question 5, I think, is the one that modernizing the map. That should have been done a long time ago, just digitizing a lot of these paper maps.
That's exactly right. There are 8,000 paper maps that currently govern what the entire city looks like. Proposal 5 would just enable us to take those 8,000 and make them one, which makes everyone's lives a whole lot easier.
Okay, I don't know if anybody's going to vote against it, but that's that. Now, the other 3 are where it gets a little bit sticky. And generally what they do is, from my point of view, remove power currently in the hands of the council and place it elsewhere, taking away what had been effectively veto power that individual council members had over particular zoning, siting, and land use decisions. Is that a fair summary?
I think that might be overstating it a slight bit. Proposals 2 and 3, really what they do is that they fast track smaller development and more affordable development all across the city. We are facing a unprecedented historic housing crisis, right? Whether you're a renter in Crown Heights or whether you're a homeowner in Cambria Heights, everybody knows that people can't afford the roofs over their heads. 50% of New Yorkers are drowning in their housing costs. That includes renters and homeowners. And we have just a 1.4% vacancy rate, which means just 1 out of every 100 housing units are actually available for rent. The housing crisis is clearly what propelled an unprecedented number of New Yorkers to the polls back in June. And so we know that addressing this crisis, it means putting a house out that's currently on fire, dousing it out. To proposal number 2, it would do a couple of simple things. If a 100% affordable housing project is proposed, it would fast track the approvals while maintaining community board input from 8 months to 90 days. It would also, for projects that are proposed in the 12 community districts that have produced the least amount of housing in the last 5 years, that are at least 25% affordable or more, also fast track those projects review, while also maintaining community board input. So again, from 8 months to 90 days. And that's really important because when you look at how long it takes to build housing in New York City, you really start to understand why we have a crisis. In New York, from idea to shovel in the ground is an average of 900 days. That's just about 200 in Boston, and it's about 400 in Los Angeles. So we know we need the tools to solve this crisis, and that's really what proposals 2 and 3 are all about.
Okay, so now tell me about proposal 4, because this is where the big shift comes, and this is where the council members have been squawking, right?
Well, look, proposal 4 actually takes no power away from the city council at all. If you are a city council member that wants to negotiate in good faith the very best deal that you can get for your constituents, whether that's investments in parks or schools or all sorts of other community benefits, you will continue to have that power. And in a way, in creating an appeals board, which by the way consists of duly elected elected officials, what you're doing is actually saying only in instances where small-mindedness is weaponizing the current process to block affordable housing, only in those instances could this appeals board take a look at only the housing components of a project that is potentially killed by the council, and return it back to what the City Planning Commission has already approved in terms of housing, both in terms of units and affordability. And if the council approves the project, it never has to go to the appeals board. So in a way, the council can actually use the appeals board as a boogeyman to say, I'm the council member, negotiate the best deal you can with me, and let's get this done.
So if we take a step back, the way the process currently works, as you said, it can end up taking more than 2 years to get even a pretty simple project done. We also have what's called member deference, meaning the local council member is essentially deferred to by the rest of the council, and that ends up raising the cost and in some cases killing different projects. The politics of changing it, though, I wanted to read something from you. This is Adrienne Adams, the Speaker of the City Council, and this is a public letter she issued. It says, in part, Mayor Adams' ballot questions 2, 3, and 4 attempt to mislead voters by hiding their real impact of eliminating the public's power over land use decisions that allow new development. This major change to remove the only democratically elected entity with voting power in the land use process undermines New Yorkers' ability to secure more affordable housing and investments for their neighborhoods. What's your answer to that?
Well, first of all, I want to be very clear. Speaker Adams deserves tremendous credit for shepherding City of Yes through a very difficult process in the council. This is generational zoning change. It was long overdue. And the fact that Speaker Adams was able to get it done is truly remarkable. That's the type of leadership we have not seen in the city council generation after generation, which is partially what's gotten us to this housing crisis in the first place. And what these measures are really designed to do is really deal with that issue. You know, we may have a great speaker in Adrienne Adams who's shown great leadership. However, we've had multiple iterations of the council over decades that have completely failed to act on housing, in no small part because we have the system where the most small-minded voices can weaponize the system to block this housing that we so desperately need. The lack of housing, both market rate and affordable, is a citywide problem, and it demands a citywide solution. And so we are now going to equip city government with these long overdue and necessary tools to make sure that we're building housing everywhere. Just to give you an example, there are 3 community districts across the Bronx and Brooklyn that each produced more than 7,000 units of housing between 2010 and 2023. Meanwhile, there's a community district in Queens that's produced 100 times less than that over that same period of time. So we really need to be able to build more housing in every part of the city. And if the system that we currently have isn't working, we need to change it. And we have to have the focus and courage to do that.
Let me ask you to put on your Democratic strategist hat, and I'll ask you a couple of questions before I let you go. One is, you and I could name several, maybe half a dozen local officials who lost their jobs, were voted out because they were not sufficiently opposed, that they did not slow down development projects. I'm thinking of, you know, Marjorie Velasquez, I'm thinking of Liz Crowley, I'm thinking of Marge Markey out in Queens. How do we sort of change the political incentives so that saying yes will actually get you votes?
Well, look, part of what the challenge has been with the current system is that so many council members are afraid to actually say yes to housing projects because they fear the consequences at the ballot box. And if you think about that, what that means is that the political system has asphyxiated our ability to deliver on this central promise that New York has been all about since our inception, which is that we are a beacon for working people coming from all over the country and all over the world to create better lives for themselves and their families. We have been the center of opportunity for, at this point, hundreds of millions of people over the time of history. And we are going to seriously imperil our demographic and our economic futures unless we are able to house every single New Yorker affordably.
Okay. I can't let you get out of here without asking you about the South Asian vote. You're sort of a specialist in that, and you've informed us and educated us quite a bit. What is happening with that as we go into the general election phase? Has the Mamdani campaign in particular been finding and signing up new people? What do you expect to see happen?
Well, look, just to let it out for your viewers to make it clear, in 1970, when my parents came to New York City, there were about 10,000 South Asians in New York City. That is South Asians from every part of the subcontinent. Today, we are actually over 500,000. That is massive amounts of growth. The South Asian community is leading demographic and population change. Bangladeshis and Nepalis have been the fastest growing demographic groups in New York since the year 2010. And South Asians are finally, after long last, saying we deserve a voice in New York politics. We deserve, our needs deserve to be addressed. We're an incredibly diverse group, but we have the same types of housing needs, economic needs, educational needs, job training needs that other communities do. And it's really important that we're at the table to have a candidate that for the first time has not only represented South Asians in this way, but made sure that the apparatus of the operation is really reaching people where they are, being really linguistically and culturally responsive. I will never forget the story about the non-citizen, monolingual Bangla-speaking taxi driver in Western Queens who was organizing his neighbors to vote for Zoran. That is a type of power that you can't replicate without really having an impact. And so I think South Asians in New York have a bright future.
Okay. We'll see how this all plays out in the last few weeks. Thanks so much for coming by. Great talking with you.
Thank you so much, Aaron.
All right. We're going to take a break now, and when we come back, officials in the Bronx are demanding federal assistance after a public housing building partially collapsed yesterday. We'll bring you those details in 2 minutes. Stay with us.
The next downtown local 6 train to Brooklyn Bridge City Hall will arrive in 2 minutes.
After 30 years of forecasting for New York, I've learned it takes a dedicated team to cover all the weather our city has to offer.
I'm so honored to be a meteorologist here at New York One because as a Brooklyn kid, this is the station that I grew up watching.
Morning, noon, or night, our team is here to bring you accurate forecasts you can count on, from severe weather updates to our weather on the ones. Watch the New York One weather experts on your TV and on the go with the Spectrum News app.
Your entertainment the way you want it. With Spectrum TV, all these streaming apps are included at no extra cost. So you can watch anything. Movies, series, sports, reality, news.
Here's a look at today's top stories.
Exclusive originals.
We await your orders.
And even more of your favorites with live TV. Stream across your devices and enjoy anywhere.
See you later.
Get it all with Spectrum TV.
I'm an ex-drug dealer, and I'll be your sub today. 2 milligrams of fentanyl can be lethal. A lethal dose is in here. Who gets it, I won't know.
It's cheap, it's potent, and it's profitable.
The sad reality is fentanyl is being mixed into everything now.
More kitchen now.
My father was a New York City firefighter. My mission, like his, is to serve New Yorkers in a city that doesn't stop when the sun goes down. Being with New York One since the beginning, I'm now honored to join you even earlier each weeknight. Starting at 8 with New York Tonight, we'll explore the latest news developments, followed by New York One at 10 to wrap up your day. So join me each weeknight starting at 8 right here on New York One.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. Officials in the Bronx are calling on the federal government to step in after that chimney collapse at a public housing complex in Mott Haven. The officials want the Department of Housing and Urban Development to help residents who were forced out of their homes, but HUD is saying that the federal government shutdown is complicating those efforts. Arnia Clark picks up the story.
It was like two, like back to back, like a boom boom kind of thing. And stuff shook. And next thing you know, I just didn't think. I just ran out the house with my kids because I saw that my daughter's air conditioner went out the window.
Noel Ramos says he was home with his wife and their 2 children, who both have special needs, in their 3rd-floor apartment when several explosions blew a huge chunk out of the corner of their NYCHA apartment building on Alexander Avenue near 135th Street in Mott Haven Wednesday morning. Since then, his son, who has spinal bifida, a spinal defect, has been hospitalized and the rest of his family displaced.
The hospital won't release my son to an unsuitable, you see what I'm saying? So, what am I supposed to do?
Ramos was joined in front of the building Thursday morning with activists calling on Governor Hochul to better fund NYCHA buildings and take them off of gas heating systems. NYCHA officials say their heat management team was conducting a routine safety check in the boiler plant of the 20-story building located in the Mitchell Houses complex when the explosions occurred, causing the chimney shaft to collapse while bricks rained onto the street below. More than 30 households and over 80 residents were displaced, according to NYCHA, though most have returned to their apartments, some without gas and hot water. Ramos and his family have not.
It is nothing short of a miracle that there was not a single casualty or fatality.
Life in New York, it's what you would expect in the projects.
But Congressman Richie Torres says that should not be. He says public housing is underfunded by the federal government and wants the Housing and Urban Development Department, or HUD, to house displaced tenants and fix the Mitchell houses, noting how the collapse occurred on the first day of the government shutdown.
We cannot separate the collapse of a public housing building from the collapse of federal funding for public housing.
We asked HUD for a response and got an automatic email reply that read, quote, "The radical left has shut down the government. As a result, HUD's Office of Public Affairs is operating in a limited capacity, which impacts our ability to promptly engage with the mainstream media. Once the government is reopened, we look forward to being back in touch."
This is not the first time that our borough has experienced a partial building collapse, and it is something that tears at the fabric of why we do this work.
The last one was in 2023 on Billingsley Terrace in Morris Heights. In similar miraculous fashion, no one was killed in that collapse either. The cause of those explosions and the partial building collapse are still under investigation. Street closures are expected for several weeks to come. Reporting from the Bronx, Nia Clark, New York 1.
It is time for a break. Coming up, a new documentary takes a look at the people behind the global migration crisis, including volunteers here in the city on the front lines and immigrants traveling from all around the world. I'll speak with the director of the film and one of those volunteers in 2 minutes. Stay with us. Here's the deal. People need a place to explore national issues that have an impact on their community. To understand those issues better, we're bringing together our team of local political journalists from across the country to break down what's happening. So join us every week to catch up on the key stories making a big difference across the nation and in your local community.
Watch The Big Deal with Errol Lewis Friday nights at 9 on Spectrum News New York 1. Available on all of your favorite devices exclusively on Spectrum.
My name is Gail, and we are in my showroom for Floor Fire Design House. Getting Spectrum set up for my business was extremely smooth. They had it set up within an hour, and I was online and ready to go and run my business. Spectrum helps me stay online. You know, I have to be able to be online at 5 a.m. when the market's open. Without Spectrum, it wouldn't be possible.
Get up to 4 months free when you bundle award-winning internet. Visit spectrum.com/business to learn more.
Every day tells a new story. At Mornings on One, we're dedicated to bringing you the stories that matter most to start your day. With in-depth coverage of the day's developing news.
I'm Pat Kernan. Here are the stories we're following this morning.
And weather updates every 10 minutes.
Some morning sunshine possible, clouds take over.
It's our responsibility to get you the information you need before you head out the door. Mornings on One. Weekdays starting at 6 on the Spectrum News app. Free for Spectrum customers.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. Tensions continue to mount at the Federal Immigration Court in Midtown. As we've been reporting, earlier this week, a photojournalist was pushed to the ground by immigration authorities. But tonight we're going to take a step back. It was only a few months ago that New York was receiving a steady stream of buses full of migrants. That started in 2022. And that journey from countries all around the world here to New York is the focus of a new documentary. The film is called Roads of Fire, and it focuses on the many different people either involved or taking part in global migration, including an immigrant family, a human smuggler, and volunteers on the front line. The film opened in theaters yesterday. Here to talk more about it is the director of the film, Nathaniel Lezra, and joining him is community organizer Adama Ba. She's the founder of Africana, a community center in Harlem that helps connect asylum seekers with vital services. She was also at the forefront of the crisis at Port Authority, welcoming arriving migrants. Thank you both for being here. Good to see you.
Thanks for having us.
Nathaniel, let me start with you. What made you decide to document this chapter? We think of it as New York City history, but you really put it in a larger global context, that there's a $35 billion global underground smuggling industry, and we're only seeing one piece of it.
Well, I got really interested in the response to the crisis here in the city. You know, at that time, we had people standing outside. They were malnourished. They were dehydrated. They've been on buses for 60 hours, sometimes more, sometimes less. People like Adama were there to receive relieve them, I got really curious about the bigger story, right? So where are these people coming from? What's the context in which people might need to flee? And how can I help the broader public understand that context so that we can maybe have a more healthy dialogue about what to do?
You went all the way up the chain. You went to the border of Venezuela and Colombia. You were with some smugglers. You were in some pretty dicey situations. I'm assuming you shot a lot of this on cell phones, right?
Nope. I had a camera on my shoulder.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I would have thought it would have attracted more attention when they're like running from the cops and doing some other stuff.
We did some secretive things with the camera, but to me it was important that we brought a high value to the film in terms of the cinematic language so that people really felt what people were feeling.
There are human smugglers who talk with you pretty openly about their work.
That's right.
They all make a point of saying that they're professionals. It's like, it's those other guys who are terrible and unscrupulous, but they're honest professionals. And frankly, they came across that way.
Yeah, they're an interesting group. I think there's a lot of feeling of what is a humanitarian? Somebody in that position when they're surrounded by so much economic struggle. Some of the people that we worked with saw themselves as Robin Hoods, people who were there to support families getting to where they needed to go. Even if the law was against them, they were with the families.
Interesting. Adama, let me ask you about, we met you at the height of the migrant crisis. One thing you say in the film, you told us this at the time, is that, yes, this was an unusual situation, but that New York, before and after the last couple of years, has gotten a steady stream, and we continue to get a steady stream of migrants. And we don't seem to be very good at handling it, despite the myth of New York as a welcoming city.
I think the film covers it beautifully. It shows how, I know the government and, our mayor was saying that they were just coming. But the film really highlights how they were welcomed with dignity. There were always people on the ground making sure that they were fed. There was people making sure that they were having clothing. Even though we're not good at welcoming, we need more time. There's always in history a group of people that always show up and welcome with dignity.
There was a really gripping segment of the film where you're on the phone with somebody who's a migrant, who's at the end of his rope, and he's telling you basically he's preparing to commit suicide. And you sort of talk him back, and it's very compassionate and so forth, but the expression on your face and your whole demeanor was very businesslike, like this wasn't the first such call that you'd gotten.
Unfortunately, it's not the first call, and it won't be the last. I'm used to these calls, but it was very important for me to de-escalate it. I even forgot about that part until I watched the film, and I was like, oh my God. That moment, it just brought shivers down my spine. Like, it was sad.
Is this your calling? I mean, this is not for everybody. I mean, I was feeling very tense and anxious just watching you all go through this stuff because it's just an endless supply of incredibly varied needs.
Well, I'm a former asylum seeker myself, so I've been through this journey already. So I guess it is my calling. Because I have the lived experience, I can help them navigate a system that's really not created for them.
Yeah, and there is one young woman in particular, Maria, that you follow, who, I mean, she's got a story that many others can relate to. Horrible domestic violence that she was fleeing. She takes her kids with them. She walks them through this jungle, this unbelievable journey that you've documented a lot of on film. She gets here only to discover that she's got a whole other set of challenges. So that, behind the headlines that news organizations were talking about are individuals who have a very, very tenuous path ahead of them and really nothing to go back to.
Yeah, she encountered the entire bureaucratic system that is in front of asylum seekers when they get to this country. It's not a simple path. They're often not fully informed what they need to do. They often don't speak a word of English, and translation services are not always, in fact, are rarely provided to people. So often they're given a handful of documents that they can't read and said, go, welcome to the United States. And they're not told that they have a certain amount of time to file their asylum application. They're not told how to file it. They're told that somebody will be in touch with them, usually via a tracker or a cell phone or a pager that they're handed, and otherwise they're left to their own devices.
I was fascinated by that group that you sort of followed. And, it's young guys, one young woman, and they're full of bravado like young people are. Hey, we can do this. It's a better life ahead of us. Let's get to the United States. And then, as time goes on and you see each hurdle that they have to come over, where they have less than $100 and they need, $350 per person, and they need it by the next day. And they're pulling all kinds of miracles, and they're calling friends, and they're doing everything they can, as well as separating themselves from their own children, which is a very emotional kind of a scene that you document.
That's right. It was really important to me that we communicated the level of financial exploitation that happens to migrants on the road, right? Every step that they take, there is some transaction that needs to be paid, whether it's bribing a border guard, bribing a cop, paying for hiked up goods on the road itself, getting to the country, paying people off here in the city, fixers, translators, all of these things. Everything costs a lot. Everything is usually hiked up. And people who were engineers, doctors, nurse practitioners, yesterday in Caracas, Venezuela, today are maybe unhoused because they've spent every dime trying to get here.
Right. And you also talk about some of the groups that have tried to work with the city. And the EV Loves NYC, the groups from the East Village, and you all are in this network where you're all cooperating and conspiring with each other. But I was really struck by one scene where they're trying to bring food to some hungry people who are, staying in a shelter, and the city turns them back, but the city-approved vendor that's supposed to bring them the food never shows up. Yeah. So the city's expending energy to keep the community people out, keep the food out, and the people that they're paying on some no-bid contract don't even get the job done.
No. And that's the biggest challenge that we had. There were people who are expert on immigration, people who know how to do this work. They just didn't want us part of the conversation. They didn't want us to support them. And that's what made this so chaotic. That is why we're in a situation we're in right now.
What does the next mayor need to do? Because this could happen again at any point. I mean, and the film actually documents that this is a growing refugee crisis. The number just goes up every year.
The next mayor needs to work with grassroots organizations who know about immigration or any crisis that comes to New York City. We've been through Sandy. You speak to experts who know about floods and things like that. We've been through the Bronx Fire. You have to work with experts and people who are in that community. So it didn't make sense that he was asking us experts from other states who knew nothing about migrants or asylum. Asylum is very different from other immigration status and reliefs.
In our last minute, what do you hope to see as this film educates the city about what just happened? What needs to happen in the future, do you think?
I think that we need to seriously work on communication and creating a coherent relationship between the city and the people who are actually on the ground. Figuring out who is actually on the ground and creating that relationship. Because as Adama just said, no one really knew how to communicate, who to communicate with. They weren't communicating with the NGOs on the ground, and the NGOs were then bootstrapping it and helping people just dealing with it themselves. So I think that the next mayor, the next administration needs to create a one-to-one relationship with people on the ground, organizations, grassroots, volunteers, and take their word seriously, because they are the ones who are there. And these huge companies that have, multi-million-dollar contracts are often not on the ground. They're from out of state. They don't really know what's happening. So connecting with and communicating with the community itself is, I think, something I really want to see.
Okay, a real eye-opener, well worth looking at for everybody in the city who deals with these issues. Thanks so much for coming by. Great to see you. That is going to do it for tonight's show. Thanks for watching and have a great evening. We'll see you next time inside City Hall.
And that's a look at some of what's in the papers this morning.
You done with the sports section?
Today's story is about the latest chapter for a beloved local business.
It's a beautiful day with temperatures in the 60s, but showers are expected in the next hour.
In a city that's always on the go, it's important to stop to hear the stories that connect us.
The news that matters to New Yorkers. That's what brings us together. That's Mornings on One.
Weekdays starting at 6.
Exclusively on Spectrum.
My name is Gail, and we are in my showroom for Florist Fire Design House. We are a full production wedding and event company that focuses on florals. Getting Spectrum set up for my business was extremely smooth. They were here the same day, had it set up within an hour, and I was online and ready to go and run my business. I have to be able to be online at 5 a.m. when the market's open. And if I'm contacting a merchant via email or placing an order online, without Spectrum, it wouldn't be possible.
One more row.
Spectrum is reliable, they're committed, they're fast, and they really take care of me as a business owner. Last year, when the really bad hurricane came through, our internet stayed the entire time. One of the businesses down the street, she was like, wait a minute, how are you still online? And I was like, Spectrum, baby. You gotta get Spectrum.
Get award-winning internet for your business. Up to 4 months free when bundled. Visit spectrum.com/business to learn more.
This election year is all about New York City. There are 51 council seats up for grabs, races for our next city comptroller and the next public advocate.
Plus, an unprecedented